It's time again for monthly Q&A on Buddha and the Slut, where someone who listens, who seems to like the show, is a fan of the show, is a longtime supporter, or just wants to hear me sweat, if audio can detect sweat. Yes, you submit a question, and I give you an answer, and it's unprepared, it's not written in advance, it is raw, and it is real, and this month's question comes from longtime fan, booster, supporter, fellow creative in the trenches, Ahmed Alamin, or you can find him under Amin on Instagram, I think. You can find him on Twitter as well. That's Ahmed Alamin, and he has quite a prolific background as well when it comes to writing books and comics, and I think even a film, and he's working on another feature film. So I don't know why he's asking me this question. I'm not sure what I can offer because I am far from prolific. I've made a few things.
No time for the old in and out, love. I've just come to read the meter.
But I guess I've committed myself to them when I make them. So here is his question. Brooke, during your story-making journey, what are your regrets?
And I won't lie to you, this mission will be dangerous.
Would you say we'd be venturing into a zone of danger?
Oh man, can I make this one fit in 15 minutes? Let us see. It shall be a Herculean task. Okay, so I guess the only way to look at this is to just not think about it too much, and let's just do a stream of consciousness thing right from the start. I regret not being brave enough to insist that I go to an arts high school. There was an arts high school that opened up in the 80s closer to Toronto, which would have been a long bus ride and probably tuition compared to public schools. And I didn't insist with my parents. I didn't stamp my feet and hold my breath and say, please send me to that, although my gut said it would have been good for me. So that was something where I didn't, I regret not trying harder. I regret not going back to drama camp for a second year. I went to acting camp for a week in Guelph, Ontario at Guelph University. It was one of my best adolescent experiences, not just for developing skills of drama and understanding, three-act structure and the flow of theater itself and how that related to the objectives that actors held, but also just from the sheer social aspect. Come on, you're there and it's like 35 girls and 15 guys, and I really got to go from a hockey town where I felt, like the least masculine kid in the world, and suddenly I felt kind of alpha, and it gave me like a freedom to express myself in a more overt and direct and even aggressive way at times, which reflected well in the actual work that we were doing. So I regret not doing that for a second summer. I regret not entering some of my earlier short stories and poems into contests in high school. I just thought, who the hell am I? Right? This isn't good. I'm writing D&D scenarios and silly short stories. I remember the first typing assignment I did way back when we had typing classes in high school on manual machines, no less. I asked the teacher if I could, instead of just doing the stuff he was telling us to type, if I could just work on a short story. And he said, sure, as long as your word count is up, that's fine by me. And I remember writing a story in the style of probably I hadn't even read any Terry Pratchett, but in the style of Terry Pratchett. It was dry, it was Python-esque, it was almost Douglas Adams-y. It was a little bit bawdy and blue in its maturity level for a 16-year-old to write. And I was quite proud of it. And I remember sitting with my English teacher during a short story reading session and reading it privately to her, and she giggled and blushed and was like, Brooke, this is quite good. And I think that was the first time where I'm like, well, maybe I could do, prose someday. So that's something I regret. University. I regret not taking more film classes. I did not do the full double major of drama and communication. I did more of a communications major, which focused more on the journalism aspects, mass communication theory, did some film, did some TV, did lots of little media projects, and also had an English minor and a drama minor. But I kind of regret not taking film as a major as well. Though they were working on old Steinbeck editing and cutting machines then, it would have been laborious, but I really enjoyed the short films that my peers and compatriots released in the program. And that adds to another regret that segues into another one, which is some of those people went off to UFC. They went to the Ultimate Fighting Championship a few years early. No, they went to University of Southern California, which was famed at the time for having a pretty good master's in film program and a good scholarship support program for Canadian students who had gone to film school. And I regret not doing that. Next regret career-wise. Moving to Vancouver and not taking acting more seriously. I did a lot of theater in North Vancouver, but I didn't really push myself to do some of the downtown shows to get into the union to try to take acting seriously as a real deal. I did have an agent. I did do some commercials. I did have some bit parts on TV shows that were shot there, but I did not take it seriously. Now, again, there's another regret nested within this. And that regret is that when I started doing theater in North Van, this was the genesis of my relationship with David Kay, as you know, the great voiceover actor who has been involved in so many of my projects, from the Cat's Maw audiobook to Broken Saints. I brought him in when I was a producer at EA, and he did voices on stuff there. We worked together still quite a bit, and I love the guy to pieces. Shout out to Dave Kay, Megatron. We built our friendship on those plays we did in North Van, Noises Off and Opening Night and Of Mice and Men, if you can believe it, and a few others. And so Dave was part of what was known as the Ocean Group at the time, a group of voiceovers in a production studio in Vancouver, the Ocean Studio, where they were dubbing anime for Viz and other companies. And it was a pretty big deal, and it was a great way for voiceover actors to get a foot in the door. And I remember Dave and a few others, even one of the directors of voice who directed one of the plays, saying, Brooke, you might want to consider doing a demo reel and getting into voice. Your voice isn't bad. You could probably work it. And, these guys would all show you the ropes. And I was like, nah, it's not my thing. I was never in radio. I think I sound too nasal. I can't do characters consistently. I wouldn't want to hear me, but maybe bring me into direct sometime. Which is strange and kind of ironic because I ended up doing a lot of voiceover direction at EA during my years at EA. So I regret not taking that more seriously. That could have been a completely different career path, and I could be, making oodles doing voices now. Let's see, next. So that was in Vancouver. I guess, electronic arts. I don't regret taking the job at all. Of course, it was, like a paid master's for me. How many people get that opportunity? I was very blessed to work on the Need for Speed team and then on Tony Williams' MI6 team for a while on the Kesson stuff and whatever. And then I went off to do Broken Saints. But what I do regret, even though it would have delayed Saints or maybe would have changed history and I wouldn't have done Saints at all, I regret not staying one more year. And this is purely from a monetary perspective. So it doesn't really count as my storytelling journey. But had I stayed another year and not cashed in my stocks, the stock price split after it essentially doubled within a year. And man, so many of my contemporaries or people of relatively equivalent status were cashing out checks that allowed them to do like full-on down payments on homes or buying nice cars or doing incredible trips or making major investments. And I just shook my head. Like basically it could have paid for the creation of Saints had I waited a year. So yeah, I regret that a little bit. Moving on a few years post Broken Saints, I don't regret anything about that process at all. Everything seemed to go as it should and created something very special. And I'm still very proud of that series. You should go to brokensaints.com or you should go to Amazon and look for Broken Saints DVD set, or you could go onto YouTube and find almost all the episodes up there. It's a worthwhile 10-hour journey. So take it, Broken Saints. What do I regret about that? A couple of things. I regret not having the courage to be the person who pitched the miniseries first. For the first 6 months, there was another guy who was brought in by an agent in LA to pitch the series. And I just trusted their process because these were professionals and I was not one. And after 6 months with no nibbles, the producer who had set up the whole deal in the first place was like, Brooke, this guy is not available for the next month and I have all these meetings set up. Can you come down? I'm sure you can do it. And in that month, I think I pitched 12, 15 times. I was down there for like 3 weeks and I pitched about 15 times and got, 5 serious calls of interest. One offer, actually, another regret. It was the company, I forget the name of the company. It was a Vanity Company from a producer. It was under his own name. He had done the film Peaceful Warrior, which was a take on Dan Millman's Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And he really loved the spiritual aspects of my pitch. Basically in the room was like, I love this, let's figure something out. And I was really excited until their offer came through, which was, we want a script that's 90 to 100 pages, so basically under 100 minutes. We want it to be PG. We're not sure about this Japanese character, Kamimura. And no, we can't guarantee that your partners in the project, that Ian and Andrew, or even Tobias, the composer, would be involved in any production moving forward. And I was only going to be offered scale to write it. And I thought, well, I could write it in 6 months. And, 35K US would have been great at the time. But I just turned it down. I was more passionate about trying my own way, doing my own projects, and still getting like that dream deal of a mini series or limited series that was mature and that was smart and that didn't skimp. There was no way it could be done for less than 4 hours. It wouldn't be possible with that narrative. So an hour and a half, no, it would have been horrible. But I regret maybe not taking the money, or at least taking a stab at screenwriting earlier. I regret not doing more scripts in that period after that offer. I've written 5 screenplays since, but I had opportunities to do others. Some of them were just more like, on spec. I was offered a few TV scripts to do on spec, as in no money, we just want to see what you can do. And I was this cocky kid at the time, well, 30-something, but I felt like a kid. I'm like, I don't have time to do anything for free. I have to focus on my own stuff. The one that comes to mind the most was the agent of one of the writers for Supernatural and The Tick, Ben Edlund. And this agent I met at the Banff Festival basically said, do a Supernatural spec script. Not only can I get it in the hands of the producers, but it'll show what you can do. And I had a great idea too. It was this whole second coming. They touched on all the angels and devils and that kind of religious iconography and mythology in the series of Supernatural at the time for sure. And I thought, let's push it all the way. If it's just a spec script, why not have all these rumors happen in these small towns across the Midwest of visions of Jesus, Jesus in a grilled cheese sandwich or in a window or statues crying or whatever, basically second coming of Christ stuff. And so, it would be Dean and Sam and Castiel having to work a deal with death to take out Jesus because the time was not yet here to have the second coming. It was pretty dark, but also darkly funny as well. And that would have been cool. But again, I wimped out. So I regret all the fear surrounding my writing abilities, not trying harder, not being more prolific. I think the next regret I would have moving forward was, I mentioned this before in one of the other podcasts, was turning down the offer to direct the transmedia and a couple of TV episodes of Legend of the Seeker, which was a syndicated show from Sam Raimi and Robert Tappert, who did Xena and Hercules over in New Zealand. I'd read the book, Wizard's First Rule, didn't necessarily love it. It was really paint-by-numbers fantasy. And I didn't really see the upside of me going to do someone else's IP, and I just didn't jump at it. He didn't see enough enthusiasm from me, so it was a pass. So I regret that a little bit. I regret not writing a book about my adventure on the Camino, the love story and the realization, the epiphanies that I had on that 5-week walk. It was funny, it was profound. I ended up doing a screenplay called The Way, if any of you want to read it. I've sent it to a few friends. I look back with a few cringes here and there, but overall I'm still kind of proud of it. But after Martin Sheen's The Way came out a year later, after I'd finished the script and was trying to shop it around in Canada, I figured it was DOA. It was Dead in Arrival, Dead in the Water. But I regret not writing a book, which was the original idea. I just thought, oh, well, who am I to write a book? I'm not an author. I'm not a writer in that way. I'm more of a visual guy. Well, funnily enough, I became more of a writer later, though still, I regret not being more prolific. On the visual side, on the TV side, I regret not fighting for the concept of The Pilgrimage, which the Travel Channel commissioned from me to do a pilot, a mini pilot. You can find it on YouTube, The Pilgrimage, Brooke Burgess. I regret not fighting for my vision and voiceover more. I had a lot of scraps with one of the producers, and in the end, it felt a little bit watered down. They tried to manufacture some drama where there wasn't any. And because of that, it didn't feel completely genuine in spots. And I think that maybe the president of Travel Channel at the time kind of sensed that things felt a little stagey in spots. Conversely, when they came back to me 2 years later and asked me to do Hex on the Beach about cursed shorelines around the world, I wasn't in love with the concept, but I gave it my all and I had a bit more creative control. And I think my only regret with that was the fact that, they made an offer for a pilot. and they made an offer to go to series after that. The money was lean. It wasn't low, but it was lean. And I had done some research and honestly felt like I was worth more because I would be producing and writing as well as being the on-camera host. And so I fought for more. And they said, well, we need to dig into your back catalog more to see if, your writing skills are what you claim they are. I'm like, absolutely. If you want to take a look at some recent storytelling. And I referred them to my podcast. And sadly, Travel Channel is owned by Scripps Howard, which means that they wanted to take a conservative approach to their audience. And they claimed at the time that a show about male sexuality and being that, edgy and progressive in the age of Me Too was not a good look on the network, so they'd have to pass. So I kind of regret pushing for more money. They might have discovered the podcast eventually, but I would have had a season in the bag and more under my resume. Here's a regret. I regret not demanding credits for projects that I contributed to because I just thought, hey, I'm creating goodwill. I can easily count at least 15 to 20 video game, that's mobile and AAA, as well as TV and film projects, which I was signed to NDAs to creatively contribute to and paid off to say thank you very much for your ideas, moving on, but I couldn't list it as a credit. And so because of that, my CV is not as plumped up as I think it should be, which can make things hard, especially when you are in late stages of career. But my friend, Mr. Amin, I think that on my deathbed, and I've said this before, I think the only regret I will have will be not connecting to people more and really hearing the truth behind their story, their journey, the journey of their life. Because in the end, even Shakespeare is going to be forgotten at some point. Your work in the end doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. It's how you touched people. Now, your work can indeed touch people. Trying to discover yourself and to share your true nature through your art as a prism to yourself, through your art to the world, that can absolutely inspire and touch people. But I know that a lot of times with my art, I've hidden behind it. I'm still concealing something about myself. So my biggest regret, if I am to have it at the end of the day and the end of my life, will have been, I would regret not being authentic enough and vulnerable enough and true enough to myself to make people feel safe to do the same. So I'm hoping before the end of my life, I can do that and not carry that regret with me to the next world. So there you have it. There you go. My regrets, creative storytelling-wise, in a nutshell. I hope you found it interesting. And in 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to get another fresh, pre-written story to ring in the holiday season. Thanks again for listening, and share the show. Spread the good word. Say something nice. Do a review. I'd really appreciate it because knowing you're out there makes life a little more bearable. All right, take care. Love you lots. Until next time.